best three.
That's 25 to Life from the band the Barnestormers on their rockabilly debut of the same name. This is Album Listen Challenge Special Edition Best of 2023. Welcome, Music Multiverse listeners. Welcome to the channel if you're new. Tonight's Album Listen Challenge is a show when I pick the album my panelists have not heard and that I believe is worthy of discussion for potentially being in the top 23 albums of 23 beyond your radio style, and that usually goes out in December. For those not new to the channel, thank you for returning. If you've not clicked that subscribe button, click it. The more you do it, the less we'll be working for the man. What's in it for you? More shows like this, exposing your ear to exciting music, new or albums and bands you might have missed. Albums from the Leaf, album review Saturdays, unknown Sundays, and we've also got catalog review shows and more. Please like and comment at the end of the show. We'd love to hear what you think and what you're listening to. This album was reviewed by myself on Album Review Saturday, and at time of the halfway point of the year, it was my album number 12. Chef Jeff, the Grateful Dude, did join me on that episode. It's in our archive, so you can go check that out. But let me give you a synopsis of my writing. Jimmy Barnes, who, Cold Chisel. Oh, yeah, the character from Tom Cruise, right? No, that's Cold Trickle. How about Jules Holland? Who? Oh, come on, Squeeze. I'm not touching anything. This is absolutely going nowhere. I don't even want to try to go on with the most of this because this is a super group. But I'm going to go on anyway. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on a boogie-woogie, rockabilly stomping record, which would be as criminal as mistaking them for a band called the Barnestormers. Jimmy Barnes is a singer and songwriter best known, in our opinion, for his work on the soundtrack of The Lost Boys. That's right, his special duet with Michael Hutchence of INXS. He's a rocker, soul singer, with all kinds of range and rock and roll know-how and howl, especially when it started with his band Cold Chisel. Check out their 1978 release debut. It's one of the greatest bands in Australian history that never made it global and probably should have. Jules Holland is a pianist who is one of the original members of Squeeze, and he's had the pleasure of working with greats like Paul McCartney, Dire Straits, Bono, David Gilmour, Sting, Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, and George Harrison, just to name a few. If you don't know who those people are, that's okay, look them up. He's also part of what might be the best music show ever on television, Later with Jules Holland. If you've never seen the show, it's been running since 1992. Be careful. You can become addicted to watching every episode, as it's basically a warehouse, and he's got different bands set up, and he just points to them and has them play. He could have Metallica on one side and KT Tunstall on the other. Robert Plant, somebody else. It's a beautiful, well-crafted show. Who else is in the band? Chris Chaney is the former guitarist from a band called The Living End. Slim Jim Phantom, I think he's of the Stray Cats. He's the drums and percussion. Kevin Shirley, bass, audio mixer. He's worked with Silverchair, Aerosmith, Iron Maiden, The Black Crowes, Joe Bonamassa, Beth Hart, Led Zeppelin, Slayer, and Metallica, if those aren't good enough credentials for you. If you got the fever for the boogie, the strut, the woogie, whatever the hell that might be, this will do it. Hot guarantee. You got some Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, and thanks to the piano tapping of Mr. Holland and the great guitar solos, this is a record not to be missed. Now, that's just my opinion. The creator here at Beyond Your Radio. Let's get to our panelists to weigh in on this rockabilly super album. So tonight on the panel, we've got Jeff Young from Florida, my wife Sue, and our brand new panelist for the entire show tonight, Everett James from Hawaii, the next door neighbor of the Grateful Dude. So, and I will not call you the ungrateful kid. I'm sure there's a better name out there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm glad that one hasn't stuck yet.
All right, so away we go. I'm going to let Sue start us off with her impression of the Barnestormers.
Okay, so I had never heard of them before. Just listening to your guys' conversation last week with a few other panelists. Um, I kind of had a slight idea of what it was going to be like, and I heard, oh, there's covers, and oh, they've been done before, and what's different or new about it. So as always, I just went in with an open mind and figured I'd see what I'd see. I liked it. Is it my kind of my music that I'm gonna turn to on a daily? No. Um, I thought it was put together really well. I thought it was fun. I thought it sounded like they were having fun making it. Can you tell me what is rockabilly exactly?
Rockabilly, by definition, would be anything that uses a rock and roll style with a with an older mentality of 1940s, 1950s.
It's a silly name.
What'd you say?
It's a silly name. It's 50s music.
Makes it sound like it's rock music made by a bunch of hillbillies, which I guess is kind of
Yeah, that's what I
misleading.
was thinking, but okay. All right.
A very early style of rock and roll music.
All right.
Blending even swing.
Yeah, I guess I was expecting like more something twangy or something going on. So, I mean, I heard rock, I heard like some blues and that kind of stuff going on, but overall the instruments were great, the vocals were great on most of the songs. It's a good tempo. Uh, Regardless of covers, I thought that every song sounded fresh enough. It didn't sound like it was rehashed or, I hadn't heard them done this way. So I didn't mind listening. Um, and again, they sounded like really tight. I accidentally, I was listening to a couple songs. I don't know. I thought it was part of this album, but apparently it wasn't. There were some really good. They're kind of more on the, I guess, the bluesy side. I'll have to go back in, Mark, and look to see what I was looking.
Are you thinking about the Barnes?
I don't
Like the
know.
Barnestormers? Because there is a band named the Barnstorm.
I don't know. There were a couple females singing along too, and they had really good voices. So,
Yeah, might have been them.
okay.
I
Well,
had
they're also good, but different. Yeah. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's not it.
like, is this the right album? But, um, so yeah, so I enjoyed it. Not my is a genre, I guess. It's maybe not my go-to. I can see this being something my dad would have really enjoyed listening to, and my mom and out there dancing on the dance floor type of deal. But yeah, the sound was great. They did a good job for what it is. I could sit and listen to it for sure.
I'll give to you album production 1 to 5.
I gave that a 5.
Songwriting, or no, sorry, album flow. Boy, sorry.
Album flow, I give it a 3. I mean, it didn't hit me one way or the other.
Right. Songwriting.
4. I mean, there's simplistic songs, right, for the most part, but there were a couple that I thought were really good. But anyway,
Musicianship.
5.
Total number of songs that you really liked. I shouldn't say really liked.
I did 5 out of the 9. I really liked Sweet Love on My Mind, Dear Dad, Crazy Crazy Love, and Land of Hope and Glory. I thought Land of Hope and Glory was really good. 25 to Life were my tops.
Yep. Your overall rating of the album then?
4.
All right. Let's let our newest panelist go next. Everett, you have the floor.
All right. So the very first time I listened to it, I kind of went in, and just from looking at the album cover, you can very much tell what the kind of style of the songs is going to be. I mean, it's airplane riding. It's got very much that 50s retro like style of art. And so I went in and I listened to it, and I was working on schoolwork, and the whole time I honestly, and this was one of my biggest complaints with the whole album. For me, all of the songs sounded very similar. Like there didn't seem to be any real like break. it was like you listen to 2 or 3 songs and you've kind of got what you're listening to for the rest of the album. Nothing really deviates too far from that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a fun album. I enjoyed it. But I kind of had to listen to it again because nothing really like jumped out at me.
Okay. Makes
So
sense.
I guess the best way to put it would be good, but not great. It's definitely a contender for being a good album for the best album of the year. I don't know if it was the best. Uh, I'd say that like the one song that I thought really kind of did the entire thing different, sounded very different from the rest of them was "Working for the Man," which was my favorite song, which was also a cover. I think it's a Roy Orbison cover.
Yep.
Orbison. And I listened to his, and that's actually the only cover I actually knew. I didn't know any of them were covers, but I mean, they all sounded good. But I actually went to the original, and was like, that one actually sounds a little better. But they all both sounded very similar. Like there wasn't like it's like, oh, whoa, those guys like the Barnestormers, they did something like totally different with it. They kind of did the same thing, which while they did it good, is like, why would I listen? Is kind of the whole why would I listen to the Barnstormers do it when I can listen to the original Roy Orbison do it, kind of thing.
It's a valid point. One of the things I thought the tempo of this record, of that recording, was faster than Orbison's
Yeah,
to some
that
degree.
could have been.
But that what I get like when I'm not defending the album by any means. I'm putting this in. I think those musicians like could get in that room and just go. Jules gets down and says, "We're gonna," and they all go, "Oh yeah, I know that song."
Yeah,
Where 50s rock is never gonna put itself in a songwriter's paradise of like progressive rock or anything of that nature.
yeah,
It's all just that good old style and toe tapping and does it get you moving and stuff like that. It'll
yeah.
never. It'd be interesting. Is there an album? Maybe another show. Is there a 50s, 60s record that could be considered one of the greatest albums ever made? I don't know.
Yeah. And one thing, like, kind of like to add on to the whole, didn't feel like there was a lot of deviation from the norm. Like in a lot of albums, you'll have like your very fast, upbeat, kind of like really going. Like for instance, I'm just going to use Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts, that album, the Beatles album. You have like Sgt. Pepper's, which is like almost it's not quite like hard rock sounding, but it's getting pretty close to like you got the guitar riff, and it just sounds overall very much like it sounds a lot harder. And then you get on and you get songs like When I'm 64, which is just like the complete opposite. It sounds like a showbop bebop too. And so that album, it kind of takes you for a ride. You're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that to happen. Now, that might be unfair to judge arguably one of the greatest albums of all time with one of the greatest bands of all time against, this group. So,
Correct.
so it might be a
No,
little unfair.
no, it's not unfair. It's it's a common thing. Like you talk about albums, you go, I had fun with it, right? It was exactly what I expected. It's in this, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then there's the wild ride albums like Sgt. Pepper or Muse or other bands like that, where you never know what you're going to get the next song. But sometimes that can be disruptive to a flow of a record too.
Yeah.
So or hard to put together and piece together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it. I definitely get it.
It was good. None of the songs were bad. By no means was anything bad. But it just felt like it was very comfortable doing the same thing, which, was kind of by the time you get to the end of the album, you kind of feel like you know the whole album, It just kind of feels very the same to me. And that was kind of my biggest complaint. I did think that the songs individually, like if you were to listen to one song, they were fun. I was like, sitting there tapping my toes, just like bobbing my head, doing all that. So the individual songs were fun, but them all together, they just felt too similar to listen straight through as an album. Like if you have these songs like mixed in on your regular playlist and you put it on shuffle, then I think it would do a lot better than just listening from song A to song 1 to song 9.
It's not unlike most bands, though, when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is fair.
Well, that's
That was
kind of okay. So that's kind of why it stuck out to me at the beginning and for half of the year. So at the half of the point of the year, that album was pretty close to toward the end of the half. And I'm like, wow, that was something completely different than anybody else at that time.
yeah,
If I'm telling you, there's no way they sold it to a record company. They went, no, no, I'll pass. You do whatever you want, get in the studio.
yeah,
You're gonna sell 100 albums, maybe 1,000 for people who know. But in Australia it probably did very well because anything Jimmy Barnes does in Australia is,
yeah.
probably magical. But yeah, and Jules Holland has a following, obviously, and that demographic is probably it's a large demographic. Don't get me wrong, but it's probably not a big buying demographic.
No.
Yeah.
And the other thing, and this wasn't really like the fault of the album itself, but the only place I could find it was on YouTube Music,
I had a
which
That's
hard
right.
kind
time.
of makes, yeah. So like I usually listen to like Apple Music on my phone and I'll listen to YouTube Music on my computer. So when I like had a song or two that I really liked, I couldn't add it to like my master playlist on my phone, which I mean isn't really the fault of the album itself. It's just kind of a something that's worth of note that you kind of got to think about
Yep.
is its accessibility, if that
It's
makes
true. It's
any
very
sense.
true. Marketing, accessibility, everything. So,
Yeah.
album production 1 to 5.
4. It was really good. There wasn't anything that I like jumped out at me that
Okay.
was like terrible.
Flow.
I'd have to give it a 3 just because it felt very kind of like flatlined.
Yeah. Safe.
Yeah, safe.
Song.
That's fair.
Yeah. Songwriting.
Yeah. I'd have to give that probably a 3.5 if that's.
Yeah. We're
It was
allowing the
good.
3.5 now. We were gonna stop. I wasn't gonna
Oh,
do decimals, but everybody keeps
oh,
going that way. So
sorry.
Yeah,
But,
Mark got a new calculator, so he's good.
but yeah, it was good. It was fun. They were Sue said it right. They were very kind of simple, but they were good in their simplicity.
Yeah.
So,
Musicianship.
uh, 4.5. There was overall it just felt like very groovy. Like you could very much like feel the music, and you kind of like got a sense of the place and the time and where you were. Like you could picture yourself in like a 50s diner
Yeah.
with these guys in their greasers jackets sitting up there going nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Just
love their cartoon version there on the out there on the web. That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
that's fun.
Anime kind of. Yeah. Look, got the old 50s car in the back.
Yeah.
Might actually, well, it's late 50s, early 60s. Total, what's it? Musicians you wanted there? Yeah. This would be the total number of songs that you really, really dug, really liked out of the was there 10?
Yeah.
Isn't
So
it?
There's
I
11.
wasn't Jeff didn't tell me about that part, but I would have to say I like I'd say half of them.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that that was a question, so I didn't have
Yeah.
time to
Well,
think about
it
it.
gives me an idea, right? And it gives the audience like, well,
Yeah.
how many, if it's half, then it's like, geez, that's darn good. Since only 3 of the songs really grabbed me. I really love the 3 songs, and and then they kind of
Yeah.
it gives people a, if you're going to expand on that, then it gives you something to talk about. But that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, there were a
That's
couple of songs that I just listened to and I was just like, oh, that's so fun. Like the 13 women and only one man song. That was
yeah,
just
that's
kind
one
of
of my favorites. Yeah.
that was just I just kind of had to stop what I was doing and listen. I was like, that's
Mhm.
funny.
Well, I was actually going to introduce the Grateful Dude that way, but I didn't.
Oh, yeah, sounds like he's got a cold or something.
Yeah, he's battling. He's all the travel's getting to him.
I know. Tell me about it. He's nuts.
Yeah, your overall ratings out of the whole thing, what do you give it?
3.5.
All right.
Pretty good. Didn't do anything wrong. Just didn't do anything great.
Okay. Mr. Young, to you, my friend.
Going back to your question about is there any 50s artist that I guess would make a big impression? I got to go with Bill Haley in the comments. Rock Around the Clock is legendary. So anyway, this sounds like music during a blood spilling scene in a Quentin Tarantino film. I mean, it could be anywhere. But at first, when I first started the first track, I'm like, okay, I hear the Elvis quiver in the voice. how much of this can I handle? Like, nothing against Elvis. I just don't want to hear 11 songs that sound like that. And I didn't, which is nice. That was a good amount of it. But I think it's true that a lot of the songs do have the same, I guess, wavelength, that they sound very similar. But that makes sense because when you think about it, all these artists have already done their own original thing. They came together to do this thing that was fun because it brought them back to what influenced them to begin with. So I'm not sure they really care if it's on Apple Music. You know what I mean? So
Right,
they might
right.
care. But yeah, no, I wouldn't say I love any of it, but I liked all of it. And it just, you could play that whole album front to back. Not like there's a front to back anymore, but beginning to end at any party, at any restaurant. You can play it anywhere. No one's gonna be like against it. It's fun.
I actually thought
the
that
only people
same
that
exact thing.
yeah, the only people that wouldn't like it are maybe like the hardcore Elvis fans are just like posers, but I liked it. It was really refreshing. What's funny is a lot of times I'll be like in a department store or like in a restaurant or like Dollar General and they'll be playing like a 50s song. I'm like, man, there's a lot of good 50s music, but I just never think or take the time to touch to the screen or click a button to listen to actually some good 50s music. How many greatest 50s albums music? There must be like 50,000 of them, right? Well, there's so many good songs from that era that we just don't hear anymore. And so it's refreshing, definitely refreshing. I mean, I liked it. It's good.
So album production,
I just give it a 4.
album flow,
Album flow, I don't think it mattered what song order that was in, so I'm just going to give it a 3.
that would be songwriting next.
Songwriting, since they only wrote half of them, I'm going to give them a 3.5.
Musicianship.
I'll go with a 5. I'm sure it sounds just as crisp and clean live.
Yeah, I'd love to see them live. Just have that
Probably
kind of
even better.
Yeah. Total number of songs that you liked overall, over, above, and beyond.
I mean, I liked them all. How many did I like more than average? Maybe a couple. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just, I don't know. It's like, I'm not dying to go listen to any of them again right now as I'm sitting here.
Okay.
But turn one on, I'm not going to turn it off.
Overall rating.
I'd give it a 4.
Okay.
I totally think it belongs in like the top 10 of 2023. It's just well done and fun. And it's, it's like I said for years about Motley Crue. They don't have to be the best at anything, but when you put them all together, they sound great. And I like it a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, I back when I heard this, it was something that was fresh. It was and of course I love Jimmy Barnes. I love his vocal. That man is 67 years old and he sounds like he did 20 years ago, 30 years ago. He can hold a note, he can make it his own. I'd certainly like him to do something a little bit more on the rock side of things, but there's all kind of cold chisel records to go back to that I haven't had the pleasure of listening to yet. So there's a lot there. Album production, yeah, I thought it was a slam dunk. That's a 5. Was it easy probably for them to produce? I'd imagine so, considering the talent in the room. The album flow, I don't think it would have mattered what song started or what song ended. So I'm with all of you on the 3s. The songwriting, I thought, considering they didn't write some of the songs, that might have been the biggest lull in the record. But I thought what they did when they did was clever. So I'm a 4 on that. I'm just taking 1 point off because they didn't write some of it. The musicianship, 1 to 5. Their musicianship is fantastic. There's nobody better at the game of what they're doing. So that was a 5. The total number of songs that I really, really liked. Yeah, I love the 13 Women, 25 to Life. And I love how the record starts off because it kind of gave me that whole feeling that, you're in it and I was wondering if there was going to be some sort of sappy ballad and that they didn't go there. No, not going to do it. I thought Land of Hope and Glory was probably the most interesting song on the entire record. But it fit the diner motif for sure that somebody's already mentioned.
Yeah, I felt like I was
So,
sitting in Johnny Rockets waiting for Brent Berger.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you just had to go to an Australian Johnny Rockets and I'll be playing in there. But my overall, it was at number 12 for me. I'm going to say after what's happened at the second part of this year, there have been some dynamite records, and it's going to probably get pushed back further. I would imagine by the time the top 23 of 23, it's probably going to be toward the back of that list just because of the simplicity of it and the songwriters and things that have come before it, which we've showcased some of them are to come. So I want to thank my panelists for doing this tonight. Everett, Sue, Jeff, we're going to be back next week doing this again, and the album could very well be the album of the year, hands down. So next week, it's Stephen Wilson,
Codex?
come on, the Harmony Codex. This is a progressive rock album, although ambient and everything together. Stephen Wilson has done all kinds of projects of revitalizing some of the most well-known progressive bands and for reproducing sounds and doing mixing with Pink Floyd, with doing it for Jethro Tull. So this is his own solo record, the Harmony Codex. So we'll be back with that next week. As always, thank everyone who's watching and happy listening.
Thank you.